Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer, and I'm podcasting from Ma'ale Adumim in Israel. Another week has gone by, and the situation remains largely the same. The latest twist in this never-ending saga is this accusation that Israel is starving the Gazans, despite the fact that it is supplying them with vast amounts of food. These things seem to be remarkably predictable, almost as if they had already been written in some mysterious book and are only waiting to be played out in reality. I believe I am not the only one alive who is wondering if they are stuck in some sort of time vortex where things just keep on repeating themselves until somebody can find a way out of the maze. It is not easy to be an optimist these days, no matter how much one is inclined in that direction. But without optimism, even if it is naive or misdirected, we are lost. We cannot lose faith. This week's Parsha is called Devarim, which means words. It is the first Parsha of the last book of the Torah, which also goes by this name. It is better known, at least to non-Hebrew speakers, as Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is a Greek word that means something on the order of repetition, since it is considered to be a retelling of the Torah in a sense. It is essentially a long speech by Moshe to all of the Israelites as they were encamped on the plains of Moab to the east of the Jordan River in what is now Jordan. The speech lasted for about a week, a seemingly impossible amount of time to endure such an oratory, either on the part of the speaker or on the listeners. What did he talk about for an entire week? Well, the book is divided into essentially three roughly equal parts. The first is a recounting of the journeys of the Israelites from Egypt and all the way through the wilderness for almost 40 years. Included in this history are the various significant episodes that led to the long wanderings and the most immediate events that had taken place over the previous few months that brought them to where they were at present. Many different places and tribal nations are recounted in this history, and it serves as a biblical reckoning of how the Israelites fit into the general scheme of things, both historically and geographically. Also included in this section are many sidelines into the essentials of God's plan for the Israelites. Many of the fundamentals of biblical religion that eventually morphed into what is now called Judaism are found here. The second part is really a long list of commandments that are either restatements from the earlier books of the Bible or new laws that are unique to Deuteronomy but are nevertheless part of Torah law. For instance, the laws of kosher animals and the various holidays are included here. So are the laws of government, wars, and monetary issues. Frequently, it is not easy to see the connection between one law and those that precede or follow it. This section contains the words Mishneh Torah, which means repeat of the law, which is the reason for the book's well-known title, Deuteronomy. The third section deals primarily with what the future held in store for the Israelites. This section springs up almost by surprise from the middle section, as there is no apparent connection between them. It includes very dramatic and cataclysmic predictions of what will happen if and when the Israelites violate the Torah and abandon God's ways. But paralleling this are prophecies that state the glorious worldly rewards that will come upon fulfilling the Torah and sticking with God. It presents an impossibly stark contrast between these two extremes, leaving the impression that it is either one or the other, with no option of floating somewhere in the middle. There is a long poem that puts this stark contrast into verse. This is biblical fatalism in all its glory, a picture of what could be and also of what will be. Deuteronomy contains almost no narrative sections. It is entirely told through the eyes of Moshe. Only a couple of sections towards the end of the book dealing with the death of Moshe are told in the narrative. In this regard, particularly, Deuteronomy differs from the other books of the Torah, which are almost entirely narrative. The reason for this difference is unclear, but perhaps it has something to do with the entire book being a repetition. This is really Moshe's recall of what happened and what the rules of the game are and what will happen if those rules are followed or not. There is a great amount of debate on whether this speech and its predictions were in any way manifested in the subsequent history of the Jewish people. Mainstream Jewish tradition holds that the rest of the Bible was precisely this, with the glorious and successful times representing when the Israelites were doing the will of God, and the exiles and disasters when they weren't. Those who hold this view believe that Jewish existence in Israel during both the first and second temple times illustrated the ups and downs of a nation that was subjected to the supernatural influence of divine forces over their lives. The exiles following the destruction of the first temple and the second temple, according to this, were divinely caused catastrophes that came as a result of abandoning God and the Torah. The nearly 2,000-year-long diaspora of the Jews that largely resulted from the destruction of the second temple was the fulfillment, in one way or another, of the prophetic predictions of the end of Deuteronomy. It happens that we are approaching the day in the Jewish calendar that commemorates the destruction of those temples and the resulting exiles that followed. It is called Tish'a B'Av, which means the 9th day of the month of Av, which always comes in the middle of the summer. This year, it comes on Saturday night and Sunday of this coming week. Jewish tradition has it that this particular parsha always comes right before Tish'a B'Av for reasons that are a bit obscure. Tisha B'Av is a long fast day, as long as Yom Kippur, which comes a couple of months later in the year. It is a difficult fast, having to go through a long summer day without drinking, to say nothing of not eating. But in the eyes of Jewish tradition, this is the least we can do to commemorate the tragedy of the loss of so much that was central to Judaism and the Bible. The question is frequently asked among Jews if it is still appropriate to commemorate this occasion, being as the Jews have miraculously returned to their ancient land and rebuilt much of what was destroyed. The exile has ended to a great degree, as there are more Jews living in Israel than perhaps ever before. In fact, it is possible that the majority of the Jews in the world will soon be living in Israel. Why should we commemorate a disaster that has largely been remedied? It happens that this very question was asked in one of the last books of the Bible, following the return of some of the exiles from the region of ancient Babylonia to Israel, some decades after the destruction of the first temple. The highly descriptive book of Zechariah states this question explicitly in its 7th chapter. Quote, "Should I weep in the 5th month, which is Av, separating from pleasure, like I have done for many years?" The answer came to Zechariah prophetically. Quote, "When you fasted and mourned in the 5th and 7th month for these past 70 years, was it for me that you fasted? And when you eat and drink, is it not you who are eating and drinking? Did God not proclaim words through the ancient prophets when Jerusalem was settled and tranquil, along with its surrounding cities, and the south and the plain were inhabited?" Zechariah goes on to complete the response. Quote, "Thus spoke the God of hosts, saying, execute true judgment, and let each person do kindness and mercy to others. Do not oppress the widow, the orphan, the stranger, or the poor, and do not think evil upon others in your heart." He continues by stating that the Israelites didn't follow these basic rules and consequently were scattered among the nations in exile and the land made desolate. So were they supposed to fast or not? The temple had been rebuilt, but they had been mourning over its destruction for the past 70 years. So should they continue to do so or cease? The answer seems to hint towards something deeper, that fasting alone is not enough. Fasting is something that we do for ourselves. God does not need this fasting in any way. In that sense, fasting is no different from eating and drinking. It's just something we need to do for ourselves for whatever reason we do it. What God really wants is that second paragraph in the response about kindness, justice, and mercy, and not thinking evil thoughts about others. This little speech might serve as a microcosm of Judaism, and perhaps by extension, humanity. We do all kinds of things that we consider to be pleasing to God or to some higher purpose, but which are really nothing more than ways of feeling good or satisfied with ourselves. The really important things, however, get left by the wayside or lost in the shuffle. It is easy to lose sight of what is truly important, since the feel-good things are so much more satisfying to us. Perhaps we are unwittingly extending our own spiritual exile through this imbalance. We do need those feel-good things like fasting, but we cannot lose sight of what really counts. To some degree, this is the core message of Deuteronomy. Remember who you are and where you came from. Know what it is that you must do, and understand where you are heading based on the path you have traveled up till now. We all have things that we want to do or need to do for whatever reason. Those things may be vital to our lives in some way, but they also may not touch the core of who we are and where we should be heading. Our fate rides on getting this right. We do not know why catastrophes happen to us. We can blame them on ourselves, on others, on outside factors, or on pure coincidence. We can drum up any number of reasons why such and such should or should not have happened. But the fact is that whatever happened, happened, and the only thing we can do is to try and make things better. We can do this. We can make things right, both individually and collectively. This is something that we must not forget, no matter how hopeless the situation may seem at any given time. We can do this. Shabbat Shalom.